If you watched the digital ID debate in Parliament on the 8th of the 12th, 2025, you'd be forgiven for thinking that digital ID was some new idea the government wants to introduce, roll out, or force upon the public. That's how almost every MP framed it. Most media frames it the same: a future proposal, a hypothetical threat, something that might happen. But that entire framing is wrong, mainly because the petition that forced it was aimed at a pointless topic: digital ID cards. You see, digital ID isn't coming, it's already here. I've spoken about this many times. But this is going to be one of my most detailed videos yet on the subject because so many people get it wrong. You see, it's already embedded across British life. It already underpins the way you bank, travel, work, access healthcare, verify your identity, open accounts, and interact with almost every public and private service. I've been over this many times before, but today we're going to go further. The debate in Westminster Hall focused on an imaginary version of digital ID, a card, a centralised database, a QR code society. MPs contradicted themselves, confused the basics, compared the UK to China, and repeated fears that are 15 years out of date. The discussion never ever touched the real architecture. It never mentioned the actual systems already in use. It never acknowledged that the infrastructure behind digital ID was built long before any vote, any petition, or any debate. And that's the problem. And that's why this explainer today exists, because I'm going to break down what digital ID actually is in 2025, not the fantasy version Parliament debated, but the real system sitting underneath almost everything you already do. And once you see the architecture, you'll understand why this is not as simple as rejecting digital ID. It's far bigger than that. It's almost woven into British society, and the political conversation is still stuck on the front-end illusion. Now, I'm not the all-knowing oracle on everything digital ID, but what I do understand is the terminology, a lot of the tech, and the slow creep that has taken place for 20 years. Some of it you may already know, I'm sure, but I'll bet you don't know all of it.
Remember, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
So, let's talk about the reality. Digital ID is not a product. During the debate in Parliament, MPs spoke as though digital ID were a new card, a new app, a new single database, a new government project. So the entire debate became a tug of war over a fictional object. But digital ID isn't an object, it isn't a card, it isn't an app, it isn't one database, and it isn't something that gets introduced on a single date. Digital ID is an identity framework, a multi-layered ecosystem built across banking, telecoms, healthcare, government portals, utilities, travel networks, payment systems, and private sector verification platforms. It's not waiting to be rolled out, it already powers the interactions you rely on every single day. And that's why the conversation about accepting or rejecting digital ID is fundamentally flawed. You cannot reject something that already exists in dozens of systems you interact with automatically. But here's the key point. Parliament isn't debating the system we have, they are debating the system they think we are going to have. And that moves us on to why the debate was misframed. See, it showed three things very clearly. MPs think digital ID is a single product, a card, a database, a centralized government repository, a physical ID you would be asked to show on the street. This is a 2008 understanding of identity systems, not 2025. MPs constantly contradicted themselves. In one breath, there is no plan for digital ID. In the next, digital ID will improve services and security. Then, we should stop digital ID. We're not introducing it. We might introduce it. We already have elements of it. These contradictions came because MPs were not describing the system we actually use. They were describing their own imagined version of it. And the most important layers were never actually mentioned. Not one MP referenced KYC, Know Your Customer, AML, anti-money laundering checks, API-driven identity exchange, application programming interfaces, AI-based decision engines, distributed identity frameworks, cross-service linking, the Data Use and Access Act, private sector identity pipes, behavioral scoring, or authentication standards. These are the real components of digital ID already running in the background today, and Parliament never touched any of them. That is the gap this video is now going to fill. So what actually is digital ID? Well, it's not one thing. It is 5 interconnected layers that together form your modern identity spine. This is not theory. It's how British infrastructure already works. So let's break it down. First up, layer 1, the identity layer. This is the base, your legal name, date of birth, address, passport, driving license, NHS number, national insurance number, biometric markers like your face and fingerprints. This is your root identity. It already exists in multiple systems. Then we have layer 2, the verification layer, KYC and AML. You see, verification is where your identity gets checked. KYC means know your customer. AML means anti-money laundering. Banks use this, insurance companies use this, telecoms use this, crypto platforms use this, mortgage brokers use this, even some delivery apps now use this. Every time you scan your passport, take a selfie, or upload documents, you are interacting with digital ID infrastructure. This layer has existed for over a decade. Next up, layer 3, the permissions layer. This layer grows every time you click, agree to terms, verify with bank, log in with gov.uk, share details with, allow access to. These permissions link parts of your life together. Banking to NHS, NHS to government, government to utilities, utilities to employers, employers to apps. Parliament never mentioned this once in the debate, yet it's one of the most important parts of the system. Next up, layer 4, the behavior layer. This includes the data trails left by spending, travel, browsing, voting, working, healthcare interactions, phone usage, device fingerprints, social media behavior. This is where identity becomes context. Again, already functioning and has been for a decade. Then the last one, layer 5, the decision layer, AI and APIs. This came more recently. This is the layer Parliament seemed completely unaware of. It includes application programming interfaces, the pipes connecting all the systems, AI-based identity models, automated fraud checks, risk scoring, algorithmic decisions, verification engines, cross-organization identity matching. This is the layer that decides, can you open an account? Are you flagged? Are you verified? Does the system trust you? This is real digital ID. 50,000 people signed a petition to reject the Data Use and Access Act or have it produce more transparency in what it actually covered. No one sat there shouting, reject the Data Use and Access Act. No one shouted, I will not comply with the Data Use and Access Act. No one paid a blind bit of notice. And it's the one piece of legislation now entrenched in law that gives the government power to access anything of yours they want. You're not rejecting digital ID. You allowed them to make it law in June. And the debate did not touch this level of understanding once. So let's discuss how we actually got here. You see, the debate focused heavily on fear of a new system, but digital ID didn't start in 2025. It actually did start with Labour, just not this Labour. You see, it's evolved over 21 years across multiple governments. Let's recap, integrating what Parliament got wrong. Phase 1, 2004 to 2010, the ID card era. MPs kept referring to this era as if digital ID were still a physical card. But although the cards were scrapped, the underlying identity infrastructure stayed. Then came phase 2 between 2010 and 15, digital government expansion. Identity assurance quietly grew across government portals. This is when gov.uk began its path towards central login. MPs in the debate never mentioned this foundation. Then we have phase 3, 2015 to 2020, the rise of KYC, know your customer. Banks and fintech companies built advanced verification systems. This is where modern digital ID really accelerated, but Parliament framed everything as new. Then phase 4, 2020 to 2021, the NHS app era. And we all know what that was backed by. Tens of millions onboarded within months. The NHS app became the UK's largest de facto identity platform ever. Several MPs blamed the government for introducing digital ID, but most British adults already had one through the NHS app alone. Then we move to the last phase, 2022 to 24, the infrastructure phase. APIs expanded, verification standards aligned, identity providers multiplied, and the groundwork for full interoperability was laid. MPs had no idea this phase even happened. Then, to top it all off, the final cherry on top, the Data Use and Access Act. This legislation was barely mentioned in the debate, yet it legally enabled the identity sharing infrastructure that already exists. This is the core reason why digital ID cannot be reduced to a vote or a petition. The system is already operational. Next up, let's talk about T's and C's. You see, most of the digital ID ecosystem isn't created by legislation, it's created by your own consent. Every single time you've tapped agree to terms, continue, allow access, verify identity, connect your account, you've expanded your digital ID footprint, not because you wanted to, because you had no choice if you wanted to use the particular service. And let's be honest, nobody reads terms and conditions. Some T's and C's are longer than The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. Some deliberately hide key information in vague corporate language. Others contain blanket permission for data sharing, behavioral tracking clauses, device fingerprinting, cross-app identity linking, trusted partners access, AI-based decision rights, third-party service integration, automatic updates without notifying you. These are not theoretical dangers. They are the foundation of Britain's identity ecosystem today. Digital ID didn't enter your life through Parliament. It entered through banks, telecom providers, the NHS app, Google, Apple, Meta, Microsoft, social platforms, insurance companies, the gov.uk one login, the NHS app, utility subscription services, delivery apps, online retailers, and every single one wrap their identity processes in terms and conditions. This is why arguing about rejecting digital ID is utterly pointless. Digital ID isn't something you sign up for, it isn't something the government lays on you. You already signed up for it. Not because you're careless, not because you did something wrong, but because modern life forces you to agree to terms and conditions you will never realistically understand, let alone negotiate. And not one MP mentioned this, not one. They debated digital ID as if it's controlled by a singular government switch. In reality, the private sector built the backbone of digital ID through contracts the public were never expected to read. This right here, this is why governance matters more than rejection. So we have to ask then, is this all doom? No, but it is reality. And the reality is this. Digital ID is not something that can be stopped by rejecting a card or voting down an app or signing a petition, even 3 million strong, because digital ID isn't that. It's not one product. It's not one database. It's not one law. It's a distributed, multi-layered identity system already embedded across British society and globally. Parliament debated the surface. The headlines talk about symbols. Creators talk about the front end. This video is explaining the back end, the part that actually matters. And that moves us on to the Parliament problem, because MPs don't understand the system they're debating. The most revealing part of the debate was this. MPs weren't debating digital ID, they were debating their idea of digital ID. Not the infrastructure, not the layers, not the decision engines, not the identity exchange, not the systems already embedded in British life. Instead, most MPs discussed their opinions: ID cards, a single central database, a papers please society, QR codes, civil liberties from the 40s, and comparisons to communist China. All while the real digital ID ecosystem, the one you actually interact with right now, wasn't mentioned once. MPs repeatedly framed digital ID as something the government might introduce, a future rollout, a proposal, an idea that must be stopped before it begins. But you cannot stop something that already exists across banking, telecoms, travel, healthcare, government services, online identity providers, fraud prevention networks, employment verification, utilities, payment systems. This is the contradiction at the heart of debate, and the Online Safety Act has now got you all verifying your age via every app you use. MPs talked as if digital ID were hypothetical, while the country already runs on it. And the contradictions were everywhere. During the debate, MPs said things like, there is no digital ID. Digital ID is already being rolled out. We will not introduce digital ID. Digital ID will help modernise our services, reduce migration, control illegal migration. There are no plans for digital ID. There's a digital ID strategy. This scheme is new. Elements of this scheme already exist. The messaging changed every few minutes because MPs were trying to describe something using concepts from 20 years ago. They were debating identity as if the question is whether to build it, when the real question is, what do we do with the system we already have? And because of that misunderstanding, the entire debate became political theatre, emotionally powerful, but structurally irrelevant. So the petition got 3 million people signing it. You see, 3 million people, one of the largest petitions in UK history, demanded digital ID cards be stopped. And that was the critical error. The public are right to be angry, right to be skeptical, right to feel unheard, right to worry about data sharing, behaviour tracking, AI decisions and government overreach. But here's the hard truth. A petition cannot dismantle an identity infrastructure that already exists. It can raise awareness, it can trigger debates, it can force explanations, it can shape the political climate, it can influence future rights discussions, but it cannot stop digital ID. And the problem with this petition was it was calling for the rejection of digital ID cards, not the digital ID system. Because as we've said, digital ID is not a product, it's the backbone of modern society globally. Banks aren't going to revert to paper forms. The NHS isn't going to abandon digital access. Government logins aren't going to disappear. Private sector verification providers aren't shutting down. Telecoms aren't removing identity checks. Online platforms aren't dropping authentication standards. The petition can change the conversation, but not the infrastructure. Next, we have to move on to the Labour whip, the reality of power in 2025. You see, if Labour decide digital ID legislation goes ahead, well, it goes ahead, not because it's right or wrong, not because the debate provided anything, not because the petition wasn't powerful, but because maths beats emotion. A 3-line whip plus a triple-digit majority is politically unbreakable. This is why the debate felt so emotional. MPs from nearly every party criticised the idea except Labour. And Labour's position matters because Labour has the votes. This doesn't mean the public are wrong. It means the system built over 20 years is bigger than one debate, bigger than one petition, and definitely bigger than one vote. Digital ID in Britain is not a legislative question anymore. It's a governance question. Then we have to move on to creators and the media, who are also debating the wrong thing. One of the most striking things about watching the debate is realizing that many MPs were using the same talking points as content creators, because content creators get their info from the media, who parrot what MPs say. And that's not a compliment, because most creators, even well-intentioned ones, misunderstand digital ID completely. They focus on chips, apps, QR codes, a centralized database of doom. See, there is no centralized database of doom. The Data Use and Access Act gave government the permission to override privacy of corporations to access your data. If they want it, they can go and get it. What part of that don't you understand? They're not creating it. They've already got it. Social credit fantasies, 1984 metaphors, and fear-driven narratives. But none of that gets to the actual architecture. Digital ID is KYC and AML verification, API-based identity exchange, NHS app authentication, gov.uk one login, private sector identity providers, decision engines, risk scoring, behavioural identity models, cross-service authentication. Not one MP mentioned these systems, and I don't see any creators talking about it. Most creators don't mention it at all. Mainstream media never explains them either. So the public are trapped between two extremes: oversimplified fear, oversimplified comfort, and neither side is giving people the actual picture. Hence why I'm making this video, to explain digital ID as the infrastructure it really is, not the fictional object everyone keeps arguing about. So next up, let's talk about what the political parties really think. You see, Labour MPs defended the concept during the debate. They spoke out, improving services, reducing fraud, and modernising identity. They avoided talking about the layers, the architecture, the decision systems, or the Data Act. Their message is simple: digital ID is fine because the government will handle it responsibly. Yeah, right. This ignores the structural reality that the system is mostly private sector led. Then we have the Conservatives. You see, they like to attack Labour in the debate, but conveniently ignored the fact that under the Conservative governments, the NHS app became an identity platform. The gov.uk authentication was rebuilt, KYC expansion exploded, private sector identity providers multiplied, political attacks don't erase the history. The Lib Dems and Greens and SNP and Plaid Cymru are all the same as well. They all raise concerns about surveillance, privacy, data access, hacking, civil liberties, China comparisons, yet none address the actual infrastructure already live today. Their arguments were emotional, not technical. And then we move on to Reform UK. You see, Reform MPs raised the strongest liberty arguments, but still frame digital ID as a product to be stopped, not an ecosystem already embedded across society. Across the chamber, every party debated different ideas, but none debated the actual system. Now, for me, we get onto what I believe are some of the solutions, the real answer to it. A digital Bill of Rights. Since digital ID is already embedded and since no party fully understands the infrastructure, the only meaningful solution is not stop digital ID, but create a legally enforceable digital Bill of Rights, a real one with teeth, one that guarantees transparency on data use, limits on cross-service identity linking, strict rules on AI-based decisions, and the right to know why you were approved or denied. Bans on behavioural scoring, oversight of identity providers, penalties for misuse, and independent regulators, and public access to audit trails. So let's wrap all of this up, because I know there's still things I haven't spoken about. Even if digital ID were perfectly designed, even if the intentions were good, Britain has a very real cybersecurity problem. We've watched the NHS get hacked, councils breached, the Electoral Commission compromised, and private companies leak millions of records. So when MPs talk about a single digital ID system, most people imagine a giant hackable honeypot. But ironically, that isn't even what's likely to happen. You see, the government won't roll this out as a new card or a shiny new app. That's the distraction. They get everyone divided and arguing about a system they haven't even created yet. They don't need to, and they don't want the liability. The far more realistic outcome, and the one we're already living through, is that the final 0.5% of the digital ID ecosystem simply integrates into the systems we already use, quietly, gradually, invisibly. Your NHS app already verifies your identity. Your bank already uses biometrics. Your phone already runs device-based authentication. Gov.uk One login is already centralizing access. Private identity providers that the government now have access to already run your verification checks. APIs already connect services behind the scenes. Digital ID won't arrive. It will fade in through everything that's already part of your daily life. And this is why the debate was so frustrating. Everyone spent hours arguing about whether we should accept or reject digital ID as if it's some future product waiting to be launched. Meanwhile, the real system, the one built across 2 decades, isn't waiting for a vote. It's already embedded in modern Britain. Which brings me to my own view. This is a world where digital ID genuinely could improve life in this country, a world where it streamlines services, reduces fraud, cuts bureaucracy, protects people from crime, speeds up healthcare, makes banking safer, supposedly, and modernizes a nation drowning in outdated processes. That version of digital ID could make Britain more secure, more efficient, and honestly better. But, and here's the big one, there's another possible future too. A future where digital ID becomes the backbone of authoritarian control. A future where it links to CBDCs, automated sanctions, opaque AI decisions, or quiet behavioral modeling. A future where access to essential services depends on compliance or trust scores. A future where identity stops being something you own and becomes something you're managed by. The difference between those two futures has nothing to do with rejecting digital ID. It has everything to do with who controls it, how transparent it is, and what rights citizens have over their own identity. And that's why this entire national conversation is going in circles. While politicians argue over a fictional version of digital ID, a card, an app, a single database, we are wasting precious time avoiding the real issues. Issues like who audits this system, who limits it, who accesses it, what happens when it's wrong, what happens when it goes wrong, and what protections do ordinary people actually have. This should not be a debate about fear or convenience. It should be a debate about governance, rights, boundaries, and power. Digital ID is not something that might happen, it's something that's already here. The question now is not, do we accept or reject it? The real question, the only question that matters is this. Will we build the laws, safeguards, and rights needed to control ID? Or will we let digital ID end up controlling us? That is the debate Britain needs to have. And until we start having it, we're arguing about the shadows while the real system is growing exponentially underneath our very feet.